Hey, welcome to the Menacing Podcast with your solo host today. Russ, Brent, and John are both away. They're gallivanting across the great wide yonder together. They're both on vacation, although separate. However, I do believe at some point they're going to intertwine. I'm going to just let that mental image hang out there and say you're welcome. So you're stuck with me. It's a Russ episode today, a solo Russ episode. This will be interesting. Nobody would blame you if you just reached over and turned it off. Can't say I'd blame you. But duty calls. I said duty. But duty calls, and so here I am anchoring solo. I was thinking, the concept of just turning off, nobody blames you to turn it off. But it's a podcast. You really don't turn it off, right? You just pause it. I think technology has kind of taken the joy out. Back in the day, you would just click off the radio, and that was it. We used to have the end of broadcast days even on television. The television you would just click off. My TV doesn't even turn off now. I'm fairly certain it's always doing something in the background, updating or sitting there waiting for the voice command of Google to bring it back to life. That is one of the nice things about technology. I can turn on my TV from anywhere in the house just with my voice. I like that. But yeah, nothing. You don't really just reach over and click off anything anymore. It's a pause. Podcasting on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or Amazon Podcasts, where this show is available. It's pause. You just pause it. You pause it, and pause always has that concept that you're going to come back and finish it. There's no finality in pausing. I don't know. That's just some random thoughts there. So you can... it'd be nice if we did the show live and we could have callers and people could help move along the episode a bit. So it's going to be interesting on that front. But we don't have that. We don't have the luxuries of that. I will go a moment here. Something we should have been doing all along. Is mail from our listeners. Sorry for the pause there. You shouldn't be afraid of the pauses. They're okay. But it's when my brain is actually thinking and doing something. We do next week when the guys are back. We did get some listener mail here that we have a listener who wants to hear an episode that we use different impersonations for every 5 or 10 minutes. 10 minutes, we change out 3 different times. That's right. So draw out of a hat, and that's who you are. So that's very interesting. So next week, tune in for some impersonation craziness. This listener also asked, and we will save this for next week. Again, I'm going to save the big stuff for when the guys are back, but I'll give you a little preview here. This listener also asked, need some help figuring out if blondes or brunettes have more fun. That's kind of the age-old question, right? Do blondes or brunettes have more fun? And what constitutes the change, one of them having more fun than the other? Now, of course, I can answer this as I am a somewhat intelligent man, and my wife does have blonde hair, so just by the very nature, blondes have more fun. And the number one fan there, my wife, she's blonde, so yes, they have more fun. Well, unless it's not good to have more fun, then they don't have more fun. So I guess it depends on which way is the right answer. So there you go. That's something to look forward to for next week. And they also commented on grass clippings. Last week we had our advice column, which I heard back from people. They didn't think my advice was very good. I Not sure they know how to live life. But if you want a clean look, I would use the bag, this listener says. But if your grass isn't looking good, I would not bag it so that the extra nutrient could help it. I've heard that. Well, and we talked about the people who just pile the grass on the lawn for the nutrients, apparently. So I also heard if you water your grass at 4:30 a.m., it's the best time. And actually, that's true, too. You don't have the evaporation. This is actually some serious... We're going to have lawn talk with Russ here. As I am a bit of an aficionado on it, as we announced last week, new home ownership. Yes, the best time to water your lawn is at 4:30, 5 o'clock. You don't have the evaporation during with what you would get in the heat of the day, so that is a good time to water it. I usually water mine between 5 to 6 a.m. So I have that on a schedule. Because I'm fancy like that. Underground sprinkling system to be able to just set up to do it. It's wonderful. I wanted a house with underground sprinkling because I was worried with purchasing a house that I wouldn't have enough things to fix. So by having the underground sprinkling, I ensured that I would always have something that I could work on and fix. So that's always good. There's a big difference between fixing an underground sprinkling system yourself and paying somebody to come in and do it. Big difference, like multiple hundreds of dollars difference. And my time is not worth much, so it makes it super easy to do. But yes, there you go. So there's some listener mail. Thank you for pitching in your comments. These were just comments. And then one idea for next for people to look forward to. So I love that. That's what we love to hear about it as we grow the podcast. So keep chipping in. Don't be afraid to email and reach out to us about your thoughts and your ideas. So we're always interested in those, even though it doesn't seem like it. We always are. So we won't be having more advice this week, but please do continue to send your questions. What as the blonde or brunettes have more fun. We'll take any question. We'll answer it. We're interested in those sorts of things and what our listeners are looking for and how they live their lives. This gives us insight into your lives. So I was driving home today from work, as I am prone to do, when you drive past these houses, and most everybody now has some sort of garbage bin at the end of their driveway. Who comes up with the names this is what I'm curious about. Who comes up with the names for garbage companies? I mean, you got the big ones, right? Like Waste Management. That one's pretty self-explanatory, right? That makes sense. That makes probably the most sense. Next, I would say Republic Waste Services. I mean, you can't have a functioning Republic without waste services. That one makes sense. That one has a bit of an air of prestige about it. Waste Management, it's like, yeah, it's straightforward. That's what we do. We manage waste. Republic Waste Services. That has a bit of weight to it. Republic Waste Services. We keep the Republic moving. We keep it clean. So I like that one. Then there's one that Aero Waste. What? Aero Waste? I mean, maybe, right? Maybe they've been in business for a long time. Since like the Middle Ages. Maybe it's the oldest waste management service in the United States. We've been around since the Middle Ages. And that's why, because they had to, during those times, they had to clean up a lot of aero waste when villages were pillaged and wars fought, kingdoms toppled. You got to have the aero waste cleanup There's a lot of it. You can't really get it. That's kind of the most mild part of the battlefield. Yeah, we're picking up a lot more than the aero waste, where a lot of the human debris. But you don't want that. You don't want that in the name. Like carnage services. You don't want that. That doesn't sound good. You gotta stick to the more PG version. That's why aero waste. It makes sense. So that must be why don't they advertise about how long they've been doing this? I think that's longer than Waste Management and Republic Waste Services have been around. Aero waste. We've been around since the Middle Ages. Since the monarchy, we've been around longer than the Republic. I think they should kind of integrate some of that. It really kind of get back in touch with their roots. I saw an interesting one, though, otherwise, which was lakeside disposal. That one, I don't know. I don't know if I can go. I don't know if I could go with them. I'd really be questioning where do you dump your waste? I mean, it feels like it's right in the name. Like, it's lakeside disposal. We just take it out to the lake. We dump it there. What's it to you? Why? It's kind of like, why do you got to know? Why do you got to know how the sausage is made? Yeah, I don't think I could go with them. I don't think I can go with lakeside disposal. It does make me, it's kind of like, I guess if only all of them were that honest about where they dump the waste. And don't even get me started on recycling services. Recycling is such a scam. Recycling, they make me do most of the work. Oh, no, so you have to wash out and clean take the labels off. You have to. So I'm doing all the work here. What do you guys do? You guys collect it, and then you usually take it to the dump where you get money for it, or the recycling center where you get money for it. But then the rest of it goes off to the dump. So that one, I don't like recycling because you're making me do the work. I have to. Why don't you hire a bunch of people to clean it yourselves? And then they're so picky about what. Well, no, you can't have. If it's an off-green color, if it's taupe or chartreuse. If it's taupe or chartreuse, then unfortunately we can't recycle those. That's kind of like with Sprite. Sprite moved away from its green bottles because it's a lot easier apparently to recycle the clear to plastic. So I'm not interested in paying for a service where I have to do most of the work. That doesn't make any sense. That nobody should be okay with it. But everybody, I recycle. Actually, I shouldn't say that. Most people I know don't actually recycle. They just, even the liberal ones, people I know, they don't even recycle that. It doesn't make any sense. It's more work, and I'm paying them. It's like I'm paying them for an experience of being a dishwasher. Maybe if that's what they advertise themselves as, like, hey, recycling. Have you ever wanted to experience what it's like to wash dishes? Then this is the experience for you. Pay us. I don't. It's such a scam. Recycling is that I don't want any part of it. We already have enough scams out there. I'd rather have some Nigerian prince contact me. I feel like maybe there could be a friendship there. I can't ever be friends with the recycling people. It's just not possible. So that's my thoughts on that. Pay for an experience of being a dishwasher. Pay for the experience of working in a restaurant. I've worked in a restaurant. I know how to wash dishes. My wife might disagree with that. She might argue with that statement, but I do know how. I don't exercise that skill, but I know how. And I don't want to pay to experience that. I used to get paid to experience that, and I didn't even like doing that. So anyways, if you got any interestingly named, and if anybody knows who comes up with the names for waste services, you also got like farmers disposal. Are they disposing of farmers? Because that wouldn't be good. We need farmers, even though it's one of the easiest professions. You dig a hole, you put a seed in it, you fill back in the hole, and then apply water. But even like that one, like nature helps. Nature will apply the water for you. So I feel like even farming, it's pretty easy. I'm just saying, that's a pretty easy gig. That might be a controversial statement to make, but I stand by it. It's always interesting, kind of, I knew I would be doing the show solo since last episode. We were going to try to get together this weekend and record it, but it just didn't pan out. So I kind of had an inkling I would be doing the show solo, which is a little intimidating. I've done stand-up comedy before, which was always a dream of mine to do. I've always wanted to do stand-up comedy. I never knew if I'd be any good at it, though. That's the thing. You never know, right? And something like stand-up comedy, trying it, so that's scary. That's not necessarily something I go in like, I'm just going to try this for kicks and grins. Like, you're putting yourself out there. But, I would tell family and friends, this is my dream. I want to be a stand-up comedian. And they would laugh at me. So I figured I had a little talent in that field. So it's not, it's a little intimidating. It's a little, being up on stage actually in front of a bunch of drunk people at an open mic night. It's it's not that intimidating. Being behind the microphone, trying to helm a 30-minute podcast, which we got a little flack for cutting back on the time. I get it. But this is the thing. This is the thing about show business, right? You got to leave them wanting more. And that's what we do. Leave you wanting. Before, we were just an hour. We're giving you everything. We're giving away the barn. That we're giving away the store. So I don't know the saying. There's a folksy saying that applies to this. So just kind of insert folksy saying here. So, but preparing material. So when you go to do an open mic night thing, you get 5 minutes usually. If you're funny, they'll let you go a little bit, but usually you kind of just prepare 5 minutes. If you're not funny, they'll cut you. They'll cut you a little short. Understand? I've been at some truly uncomfortable open mic nights. Actually, I think I commented in one of the first episodes of this podcast about my wife and I going to see an actual stand-up comedian, Greg Morin. And the lead up, they had an open mic night essentially of local comedians leading up to him. And it wasn't great. It was rough. And everybody goes to the sexual jokes and the swearing. And I get it. Easy laugh. I get it sometimes. Easy laugh. But you gotta be a little bit more creative. But it's hard. Writing material is hard. I wrote down some stuff for this episode. And I was like, that's a good amount of stuff. And all of a sudden it was like, 30 seconds worth of material. You blow through it so quickly. I remember writing some stand-up for open mic nights and trying to get that 5 minutes, and you're going and you're like, oh yeah, this is all great. Got all this great material. 2 minutes. You're like, son, what? It just goes by so quickly. You don't know how much writing goes into just 5 minutes. I don't even, I can't even fathom big name comedians who write material for an hour or longer set, for a 30-minute set, for crying out loud, let alone an hour or more. I don't, it's so easy to just, you write, type, and especially if you're writing on like a mobile device, it feels like you're writing a lot longer than you actually are. And then you've got like 5 seconds worth of material. I would perform some of my stuff. You can find it on my YouTube page. It's not a great video. It's I'm going to do an obligatory shout out for myself here. I'm going to push my own product myself. You know what? You got to be your biggest proponent. And so you find it at Dangerous Thoughts is my YouTube handle. I wanted at Too Dangerous, which is what the moniker I usually take. But some person will say that. Maybe they're not even a person. They took it. Who does that? Who does that? So you can find there's a very poor quality video on there, but it has some of my stand-up routine on there. And it's changed. You adapt it. You find what works. I had done a few open mic nights before this event, and you find what works and you find what doesn't work. And then you get rid of what doesn't work and you keep what does. So Brent's up camping with his family. I've talked about this extensively. My dislike of camping. I'm not going in a tent anywhere. I refuse. I grew up trailer camping. I'll do that. It's not that I am too good to tent camp, but I'm a little bit. I consider myself a little bit better than tent camping. It's just there's tent camping is homeless people do that. That's like I'm trying to be respectful. That's not a holiday to homeless people. That's how they live. I prefer not to live that way. That's but if you choose to live that way, just remember that's what that's how homeless people live. So and I try to. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be all of a sudden find myself as part of a tent city. So there's that. I'll take a trailer. I'll take a travel trailer, fifth wheel with all the amenities, preferably. But I'm not above a like a nice 24-foot just travel trailer of some variety. But there's so many options out there now. You don't have to settle for. We've moved past. Haven't we advanced as a society beyond tent camping? We don't have to do that. There was something we worked hard not to have to do as a society as a whole. Like that's how you lived. You lived in a dirt shack, which is the equivalent of a tent. Might be a little nicer than a tent, dirt shack. But we worked hard to get past that point in our society to where we could travel around. We could have a house, leave that house, bring another house with us, and then just live somewhere else for a week. And then take that little house back to our main non-mobile house and just park it outside there. That's what civilization has brought us. Houses, we have so many houses we can just move around with a house and stay in a mobile house away from our actual. That's what civilization has brought us. That's the beauty of separating from England. I'm just saying. I think that's not to hit out at our UK listeners. We have a very solid listener base in the UK, and I'm not interested in angering them because I value them and I respect them. And you know what? I'm a little bit okay. I'm a little reticent to say this. So, we had a friend go to the United Kingdom, as we talked about. One of our listeners, he was leading the menacing UK tour for us, and boy, he delivered. He delivered some good metrics for us from the UK audience. But he picked up, at the request of my lovely wife, he picked up some tea for her. My wife's a tea drinker. She's unfortunately never been able to reform her, get her into the coffee, which, as Thomas Jefferson so eloquently put it, is the favorite drink of the civilized world. So, now again, I mean, no offense to our UK listeners. I don't want to anger them. Our listener /friend, and for lack of better terms, Will brought back tea from England for my wife, and I'm really reticent to admit this, but it by no means was better than coffee. But it was okay. It was okay. It was not bad. I really for a second, I shouldn't even say this, but for a second, I really had some thoughts about how great monarchies are. And I almost changed my voter registration to Tory, but I didn't. But it was close. It was very good. That's how good it was. And it was, I don't even know what type of. I think it was maybe the Queen Anne. My wife could tell me. I'll bring that. I know you're on the edge of your seat with that one, but my wife will tell me. I drank a pot of coffee after it just to make sure that I was still okay and in the right, and there's still coffee next to the coffee maker, and that's never going to change. But the tea was smooth. It was I did not expect it. So if you have a favorite tea, or if you're even a coffee lover out there, I'm an avid coffee fan. So I've been called a coffee snob more times than I'd like to admit. I'm really not, though. I do like good coffee, though, and I will sneer at you if you don't do it the right way. I don't think is that what qualifies as a snob? I'm not sure on the definition, and we're too close to the end of the podcast now to look up a definition of it. I just don't think that would work out well. So we don't have time to look up the definition of snob, and I don't think anybody. I'm not even sure that's in the dictionary anyway. So, rather a moot point. Thank you for bearing with me this episode. Which, actually, speaking of bears, we never got a resolution to. Nobody knows yet. If that bear in China that we talked about a couple episodes ago, it's the episode titled "My Rolls Protect Me from Predators." Nobody knows if we have no confirmation if it was a person or not. So they're supposed to be checking that out. So we'll see if there's ever a resolution to that. There's been a lot of zoologists coming out since then and saying that it was indeed a real sun bear, which I don't. I don't know if that exists. But anyway, so we'll see if there's a resolution to that. If you've heard anything, send us the article. And if there's a trash service, if anybody knows who names them, let me know. I'm very curious. So we'll be back next week in full force with John and Brent. It's been great helming the podcast with you. This is Russ. You can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon. My goodness, you can find us wherever your heart desires to listen to a podcast. We'll be there. So you can rate and review us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you're a Spotify listener, we do have a question and answer at the bottom of this episode. And yeah, sometimes we post polls. There's polls. We like to be interactive. So you can find us on Facebook, search for The Menacing Podcast, or head on over to X, formerly known as Twitter. And you can follow us at Menacing Podcast. And again, that's that email to send us your thoughts, ideas, recipes. We'll take anything. menacingpodcast@gmail.com. So thank you all for being loyal listeners. Tell your friends and give us the old 5-star treatment anywhere you can.